The house on County Road 329 had no windows. At least, none that faced the road. Just a blank wall of weathered cinder blocks, grey and cracked, stretching across the horizon like a barrier. The roof sloped sharply, tin panels dented and rusted, and a single metal door marked the entrance. No mailbox, no lights, no signs of life. I discovered it the night my friend Marco disappeared. He'd gone out to explore the abandoned structures along the back roads outside. Segan. I waited at the truck, staring at the dark fields, the wind whistling through broken fence posts. When I finally walked toward the last place he'd sent a text, going in. Be back soon, I saw it. The door was open. Inside smelled like concrete, dust, and something bitter, like burnt rubber. The floor was smooth stone, too clean for a place that had been abandoned for decades. Footsteps echoed unnaturally loud, even though there was no one there. The interior was empty, except for a corridor of doors, dozens of them, lining each wall, evenly spaced. All closed, all the same. No labels, no numbers, just doors. I called Marco's name. No answer. I opened the first door on the left. A bedroom. Empty. No furniture. But the floor was covered in sand. Red, fine. Impossible to track where it had come from. As I stepped inside, I noticed faint footprints. Bare feet. Small. Leading to the far wall. When I reached it, the footprints disappeared. The wall looked solid. I opened the next door. Another room. Same sand. Same footprints. This time, I followed them. They led into a small closet built into the far wall. Inside, the air was thick, almost sticky, and the faint sound of breathing met me. I froze. A child stepped out from the shadows. Pale. Eyes black. Mouth stretched into a grin that made my stomach twist. I've been waiting, the child whispered. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Marco. The child shook its head. Not him. But you'll learn soon. Every door along the corridor now began to open slowly on its own. Each revealed a figure, children, teenagers, adults, some naked, some clothed in tattered fabrics. Their faces were familiar. I recognized a neighbor, a former classmate, even a cousin I hadn't seen in years. Their eyes were hollow, but they smiled at me, patient, expectant. I realized then that the sand on the floors wasn't natural. It was tracks of people who had been trapped here before me. Every figure had left their trace. Every figure had stayed. I tried to run. The corridor stretched infinitely. Doors multiplied, walls shifted. No matter which way I turned, the black-eyed children and pale adults appeared, guiding me, nudging me, whispering softly. Marco appeared at the far end, standing perfectly still. His eyes were different, empty, glossy, no recognition. His lips moved silently. They like to watch before they learn. A new voice whispered from behind. Me. Low. Smooth. Everywhere. The air itself seemed to speak. The doors are patient. I fled through the first door I could reach. It opened onto a room filled with mirrors, full length and warped. Every reflection was wrong. My body stretched, twisted, multiplied. Behind me, the figures pressed closer, pressing their faces against the glass, smiling. I could feel their breath on my neck. I smashed a mirror with my fist. The sound reverberated through the house. When the glass shattered, I stumbled through the shards into a hallway that had disappeared moments before. I ran until the door at the end of the hall opened onto the night. The fields were empty, the wind whistling. The house was gone. But when I turned to check my truck, the open metal door I had entered through was there again, standing alone in the darkness. And inside, faint red footprints led from the threshold, disappearing toward the horizon, waiting for the next person to follow. The house on Ranch Road 12 was small, not remarkable. One story, weathered siding, front porch sagging, roof patched in half a dozen different places over the years. But it had been empty for decades, and every time I drove past it, something about it felt wrong. I first noticed it while making deliveries for the feed store. Dusk settling over the mesquite trees, the smell of dust and manure heavy in the air. The house sat off the road slightly, a dirt driveway barely visible. That day, the door was open. Just a crack, swinging in the wind, or so I thought. Curiosity got the better of me. I parked and stepped up to the porch. The air was unnaturally still. Warm, sweet, almost cloying, like fruit left too long in the sun. I called out. Nothing. Just the creak of the porch beneath my boots. Inside, it smelled older. Dust, dry wood, and something coppery. Blood. Not fresh, but iron-sharp in the air. The living room was empty except for a single chair, turned to face the corner. I stepped closer. The chair rocked slightly, then stopped. I froze. Then I heard it, a voice. Whispering. Low. Direct. My name. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway led to 3 bedrooms. Each was stripped bare except for objects arranged carefully in the center. A cracked doll, a pair of worn work gloves, a child's shoe. Small, intimate things, almost inviting, almost innocent. But each bore a mark, scratched deep into its surface, X. The last room had a door slightly ajar. The smell coming from inside was stronger, earthy, metallic, warm. I should have left, but I didn't. Inside was a mirror, full-length, tall, framed inward, carved with patterns I didn't recognize. I stepped closer. My reflection stared back, but wrong. Too slow. Not quite mimicking me. Eyes too wide, lips twitching. Behind me, a sound. Footsteps. Soft. Bare. Approaching. I turned. No one. Then the walls shifted. Slowly, imperceptibly. One corner of the room pressed inward. The mirror rippled like water. From it, a figure emerged. Pale. Thin. Small. It was a child, or had been once. Eyes black. Mouth stretched wide. Hands reaching, but not touching, just studying. The chair in the living room creaked. I felt movement beneath my feet. The floor was soft, like it wasn't really there. I ran. Down the hallway. Each bedroom now occupied by the pale child figures from the mirror. They watched silently, their heads tilting in unison, studying my every step. I burst through the front door. The porch sagged as if relieved. The wind whipped across the trees. The house was silent, unremarkable again. That night, I dreamt of the objects. Dolls, gloves, shoes, arranged in neat rows. Each one held a shadowy figure inside. My own face stared back at me from the cracked doll's eyes. I've never gone back. But every time I drive past that stretch of Ranch Road 12, the air feels heavier, the wind quieter, and I swear I see the chair rocking slightly, facing a corner, waiting. The house on Highway 77 outside. Kingsville had been empty for as long as anyone could remember. Locals called it the Navarro Place. No one had lived there since the old man who built it vanished, without a trace in the 1970s. Stories drifted through the town like smoke. People said they saw lights flicker at night, silhouettes moving behind boarded windows, and sometimes a faint humming that sounded like a lullaby, slow and wrong. I first saw it on a delivery run for propane tanks. The sun was low, painting the brush orange and gold. The house sat back from the road, behind a fence sagging in the middle. The yard was overgrown, weeds taller than the porch, but somehow the house itself looked untouched, clean. Windows intact. No dust. No debris. The front door was open. I parked, heart thumping. Something told me I should leave, but I needed to check. Curiosity isn't something you can turn off easily. Inside, the air was cool and heavy. Smell of old wood, faint perfume, and a metallic undertone, almost like rusted iron. The living room was empty except for a piano in the corner. Dust covered the keys, but the pedal shone. A note rested on the bench. Sit. Play. I laughed nervously. A prank, probably. Then the keys pressed down. Slowly. By themselves. The notes rang out, soft, deliberate. A melody I recognized. My grandmother's lullaby. I froze. The hallway led to bedrooms. Each room looked normal, lived in even, beds made, nightstands arranged. But the air was thick with the scent of decay. Something had died here long ago, and the house had kept the smell. In the last room, I saw them. Chairs lined up, facing the wall. On each chair, a person sat at a pale, thin, eyes fixed on the wall, motionless. My mind screamed. I recognized one. My cousin Tyler, the one who went missing years ago. I backed away. The chairs creaked. The people shifted slightly. Heads turned. Black eyes. Smiles that didn't reach anywhere but the corners of their mouths. From behind me, the piano played again. This time, louder, faster, every key pressed with purpose. I turned to see no one at it. Then I understood. The house didn't just keep people. It taught them. Every melody, every movement, every breath was absorbed. Shapes twisted into its rhythm, becoming part of it. I ran. Down the hall. Doors twisted, length stretched impossibly. Figures pressed against the walls, silent observers. The piano followed me, echoing the steps I took, filling the house with sound that wasn't mine. I burst through the front door. The yard was overgrown again, the fence sagging. No piano, no lights, no figures. The house looked abandoned, waiting for the next visitor. Tyler's laugh echoed in my mind for days. Not cheerful, not happy. It was slow, patient, waiting. Sometimes, driving Highway 77 at dusk, I swear I hear the piano again. And every time, I feel watched. The house on Willow Bend Road wasn't hidden. That was the worst part. It sat right there between two normal ranch homes outside of Fredericksburg. White siding, green shutters, neat gravel driveway. No weeds, no broken windows, no warning signs. If you didn't know better, you'd think a family lived there, kids, maybe a dog, someone who waved when you passed. No one did. I noticed it while house-sitting for my aunt. Every evening at exactly 7:12, the lights inside that house turned on, room by room, from left to right. At 9:03, they all shut off at once. No variation, no delay, like a timer that had never failed. I asked the neighbors. They shrugged, said the owners moved years ago. Said the power company swore the place wasn't connected to the grid anymore. Said if you knocked, no one answered, but if you stayed long enough, you'd feel like you were being evaluated. That word stuck with me. Evaluated. One night, curiosity won. I walked over just before sunset. The gravel didn't crunch under my boots. It felt packed down, almost rubbery, like it absorbed sound. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house smelled faintly of disinfectant and warm dust. Clean. Too clean. Every surface polished. Furniture arranged perfectly, symmetrical to an obsessive degree. Couch centered exactly. Lamps equidistant. Family photos on the walls, but the faces were scratched out. Not violently, just carefully removed. The clock above the mantel read 7:11. It ticked loudly. I wandered through the living room, then the kitchen. Everything pristine. No food. No clutter. No sign of life ever interrupting the order. On the counter sat a clipboard with papers neatly stacked. Forms. At the top of the first page, typed in bold letters. Subject observation. Day 2194. The name field was blank. The notes below were intimate. Subject displays curiosity but resists direct interaction. Subject exhibits loneliness markers. Subject suitable for continued monitoring. My hand shook as I flipped pages. Different handwriting. Different ink colors. Subject demonstrates fear response to isolation. Subject becoming aware of observation. Subject nearing redness. I heard a click. The clock changed to 7:12. Lights flicked on down the hallway, one by one. I followed them. Each bedroom was a replica of the others. Same bed. Same dresser. Same lamp. Same empty closet. No personal items. No variation. It felt like walking through a display model meant to imitate a home without understanding why people lived in them. At the end of the hall was a door I hadn't seen before. It was marked with my name. Inside was a room with a large observation window, like a one-way mirror. Beyond it was another house. My aunt's house. I watched myself sitting on the couch across the street, flipping channels, unaware. My stomach dropped. Behind me, the room filled quietly. People stood shoulder to shoulder, all facing the glass. Men, women, children. Their faces were smooth, calm, expressionless. Their eyes reflected the scene like glass. One of them spoke. "You notice faster than most." Another voice followed. "That's good." I asked what they were. They answered in unison. "Residents." I backed toward the door. It was gone. "We don't trap," one said gently. "We replace." The image in the window shifted. I saw my aunt's house empty now. Lights off. Silent. Then I saw myself walking across the street toward Willow Bend Road. Movement stiff, unfamiliar. "No," I whispered. The lights went out. I woke up sitting on my aunt's couch. Morning sun streamed in. Everything felt normal. Except across the street, the house was dark. Empty. For sale sign in the yard. And when I caught my reflection in the TV screen, it lagged, just slightly, like something was still learning how I move. The house on Loop 337 near New Braunfels wasn't on any real estate listing. Nobody had lived there in decades, and yet it always looked lived in. Curtains pulled, porch swept, mailbox upright. Passers-by said they sometimes saw smoke from a chimney, but no one ever reported a fire, and the closest power lines ended a mile away. I discovered it while delivering supplies for a hunting trip. Dusk was settling over the hills, the Guadalupe River reflecting orange streaks of sunset. The house sat tucked into a small hollow, barely visible from the road. The gravel driveway was clean, not a single tire track. The door was open. I should have driven past. Curiosity, or something worse, made me step onto the porch. Wood groaned under my weight, but it sounded too deliberate, like the house knew I was there. Inside, the living room smelled of dust and iron. A single rocking chair creaked gently in the corner. I called out. No answer. Hallways stretched long, longer than they should have for a one-story home. Bedrooms appeared, one after another, each identical. Beds neatly made, dressers empty, closets bare. On each bed lay a single object, a photograph, a journal, a toy, all perfectly preserved, as if untouched by time. I picked up a photograph. It was of a family I didn't know, standing in front of the house. Except in the image, the family was older than the house should have allowed. The father's hair was grey. The mother's posture stooped. The children looked like teenagers, decades older than the original. Snapshot should show. I dropped it. The sound echoed unnaturally. Footsteps appeared behind me. Bare, soft. I spun around. Empty hallway. Then I noticed the walls themselves seemed alive. Shadows pulled in corners, thick and viscous, moving against the flow of light. I tried to run, but the hallways bent impossibly. Doors I had passed were gone. New doors appeared. Rooms multiplied. A whisper came from every room at once. Stay. Watch. Learn. I backed into the last room at the end of the hall. It was empty except for a mirror. Full length, old, frame carved in twisted patterns. My reflection stared back, but wrong. Too still. Mouth slightly parted, eyes wider than mine. Behind me, the whisper became laughter. Low, calm, patient. Figures emerged from every shadowed corner. Children, adults, all pale, eyes glossy and black. Not threatening, just waiting, watching, learning. I ran. Down one hallway after another, rooms stretching endlessly. Each room displayed someone I recognized. Old neighbors, classmates, strangers I'd only seen once. All smiling, all staring at me. Finally, I burst through a back door onto a porch. The sun was rising. Birds chirped. The house looked empty again. Porch creaked under my feet. Door swung closed behind me. I never returned. But every time I drive Loop 337, just after dusk, I see the porch light flicker. The rocking chair moves gently, and I feel eyes on me from inside the walls, waiting for the next person to enter. The house on County Road 214 had a reputation. I ignored until it became personal. I first heard about it from a deputy in Lampasas. He spoke quietly, voice low, like revealing a secret could get him killed. Nobody goes in that house. Doesn't matter if it's abandoned. Doesn't matter if you're curious. Just don't. I laughed. I was 28, stubborn, and convinced I wasn't scared. The house sat beyond a bend in the road, surrounded by cedar trees so thick the sun never touched the ground beneath them. It was one of those old two-story frame houses with a wraparound, porch sagging dangerously, paint peeled and long, curling strips. The windows were dirty but intact. When I arrived, the wind was still. Too still. The air smelled faintly sweet and rotted at once. I stepped onto the porch. Boards groaned like old bones. The door opened easily. Inside, the house smelled like iron and dust. It was empty, except for a faint, rhythmic thumping, like a heartbeat, echoing from upstairs. I called out. Silence answered. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked. The walls were lined with photographs, children, adults, families posed in front of the house. In every picture, the same pattern repeated. Someone missing. Someone added. Faces scratched out. At the end of the hall, a door stood slightly ajar. Warm air seeped out. I could hear whispering. Not words, just soft, repetitive syllables. I pushed it open. The room was small. A crib stood in the center. The mattress was empty, but the shadows inside moved, like water disturbed in a pond. From the corner, a small figure emerged. Pale, thin, no hair, eyes black as night. Its mouth opened in a silent scream. I stumbled back. Behind me, the hallway had vanished. The walls curved inward. The staircase dissolved into a solid block. The ceiling stretched impossibly high. The house itself had become alive. Figures pressed from the walls. Adults, children, dozens of them. Some reaching, some just watching, tilting their heads in unison. Their eyes followed me, but they didn't blink. The pale child floated closer. I could feel its breath, cold, damp, metallic. You shouldn't have come, it whispered. The house exhaled, and the air thickened. My lungs burned. The floor beneath me softened, swallowing my boots. The walls shifted, pressing inward. Every photograph along the hallway rippled, faces smiling, laughing silently. I ran. Hallways elongated, doors shifted, rooms multiplied endlessly. The figures followed, silently, patiently. Finally, I found the front door. The porch stretched impossibly far, yet I forced myself forward. I stumbled onto the gravel, heart pounding, the night air biting. The house loomed behind me, silent, empty again, waiting. I never went back. But nights later, I dream of it. The soft thumping of the floorboards, the whispers, the black-eyed child. And every time, I wake up knowing it isn't a dream. The house remembers me. The house on State Highway 21 near Bastrop had been empty for nearly 20 years, but it wasn't abandoned. Not really. That's what the locals always said in hushed tones. It was resting, or waiting. Or whatever euphemism people use to avoid admitting what they truly felt, fear. I was 24 when I first saw it. I was delivering supplies for a construction crew working outside town. The sun sinking behind pine trees, orange and heavy in the sky. The house was tucked behind a copse of trees, almost invisible from the road. When I turned onto the dirt driveway, the air grew unnaturally still. Even the cicadas stopped singing. The front door stood slightly open, a faint light flickering inside. I should have turned back. I didn't. Inside, the air smelled of cedar, dust, and something else, something metallic, sharp, almost like blood left too long in the sun. The living room was empty except for a rocking chair, slowly swaying as though someone had just left it. Hallways stretched farther than the house should allow. Each doorway led to rooms identical in layout, beds made, dressers empty, chairs perfectly centered. On each bed lay a single object, a doll, a watch, a child's shoe. Each had markings scratched into its surface. As I passed, the object seemed to shift slightly, moving just enough to be noticeable if you blinked. The shadows in the corners of the rooms thickened, pooling like oil. At the end of the hall, a door stood slightly ajar. From inside came the faint sound of breathing, not mine. Slow, regular, patient. I pushed it open. The room was a mirror of the hallway, but reversed, like stepping into a reflection. Hundreds of figures stood along the walls, pressed close together, staring at me. Children, adults, some recognizable from the town. Their eyes were black voids, and their faces stretched into smiles that never reached their eyes. A voice whispered from the back of the room, soft and deliberate, "We've been waiting for you." The figures moved in unison, gliding forward, not touching, just observing. The room seemed to elongate endlessly, walls bending, ceiling rising. I tried to run. The hallway I came from dissolved, replaced by more rooms, more figures, more objects, all waiting. A child floated toward me, pale and thin, its fingers grazing my arm. Cold, sticky. I felt my heart stall. "You belong," it whispered. "The house chooses." I slammed my eyes shut. When I opened them, I was outside, standing in the gravel driveway. The house was dark, silent, normal. I never returned. But sometimes, late at night on Highway 21, I see the windows flicker with light. And I swear, if I listen closely, I hear footsteps following me down the empty road. The house off Ranch Road 1431 near. Marble. Falls didn't show up on GPS. Your phone would lose signal right before the turn. The map freezing like it had hit a wall. Locals knew the place anyway. They called it the Still House, because no matter the weather, storm, wind, heat shimmer, it was always unnaturally calm around it. No birds, no insects, no sound but your own breathing. I learned about it after my cousin Ellie went missing. She'd been driving back from Austin late one night, took 1431 instead of the highway. Her car was found the next morning, parked neatly on the shoulder, keys still in the ignition, headlights off. No skid marks, no sign of a struggle. Her phone was in the cup holder, dead. The last photo on it was taken at 2:17 a.m. It showed a house, white siding, wide porch, all the lights on inside. I recognized it immediately. The Still House. The sheriff wrote it off. "She wandered off," he said. Heat exhaustion, confusion. But Ellie was practical, cautious. She wouldn't leave her car in the middle of nowhere, at night unless something made her. So I went looking. I found the turn just past mile marker 28, a narrow dirt road barely wide enough for one vehicle. The moment my tires left the pavement, everything went quiet. My radio cut to static. The wind stopped. Even the crunch of gravel sounded muffled, like the sound was being swallowed before it could escape. The house appeared suddenly, closer than it should have been. Every light inside was on. The front door stood open. The porch boards were clean, swept, free of dust. That alone terrified me. No abandoned house stays clean in Texas. Not for long. Inside, the air was cool, unnaturally so, like stepping into a basement that hadn't seen sunlight in years. The smell hit me next. Old paper, damp wood, and underneath it, something sour and human. The living room was furnished, but wrong. Couch cushions perfectly fluffed. Chairs aligned too evenly. Family photos lined the walls. But every picture showed the same house from different angles, different decades. The people standing in front of it changed, but the house never did. In one photo, I saw Ellie. She stood on the porch, smiling stiffly, eyes unfocused. The timestamp burned into the corner read tomorrow's date. My heart hammered. I dropped the frame. It didn't shatter. The glass bent slightly, like rubber, then settled back into place. I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, careful. I called Ellie's name. My voice sounded wrong, stretched thin, like it had to travel too far to reach my ears again. The footsteps stopped, then started again, closer. I climbed the stairs. Each step felt soft under my boots, as if the wood were breathing. The hallway upstairs was long, too long, and lined with doors, all closed. Light leaked from beneath each one, warm and inviting. From behind one door, I heard whispering. Ellie's voice. "I'm okay," she said softly. "It's nice here. It's quiet." I pushed the door open. The room was empty except for a dining table set for dinner. Plates, silverware, glasses filled with dark liquid. Around the table sat people, dozens of them, perfectly still. Their skin was pale and waxy, eyes open but unfocused, mouths slightly parted as if mid-conversation. Ellie sat among them. She turned her head slowly and smiled at me. "See," she said. "They don't leave. They don't hurt. They just stay." I grabbed her arm. Her skin was ice cold, stiff beneath my fingers. The others turned their heads in unison, their eyes focused. The walls began to hum. Not loud, deep. A vibration I felt in my teeth, my bones. The house was awake now. A pressure filled the room, like the air was thickening, pressing inward. "She's part of us," they said together. Not shouting, not angry, just stating a fact. The lights flickered. I pulled Ellie toward the door. Her feet dragged. She wasn't fighting, but she wasn't helping either. The hallway stretched as we ran. Doors opened on their own, revealing more rooms, more tables, more people frozen midlife. I felt hands brush my back, cold fingers grazing my neck. The front door appeared suddenly. Daylight poured in. I shoved Ellie forward and stumbled out after her. The moment my feet hit the dirt road, sound came rushing back, wind, insects, distant traffic. I turned around. The house was dark, silent. Ellie collapsed, sobbing, clutching my jacket. We never spoke about what happened inside. She doesn't remember most of it. Just the quiet, just the feeling of being watched and cared for by something that didn't understand what love was supposed to be. The house still stands. Every so often, late at night, all the lights turn on at once. And if you're driving past and you look closely, you might see someone new standing at the window, smiling patiently, waiting for the quiet to take you to. The house near Lake Buchanan had been abandoned for decades. Nobody claimed it. Nobody cared for it. But it never stayed empty for long. Locals whispered about lights flickering at night, strange sounds like muffled laughter, and the occasional figure glimpsed through the dusty windows. They called it the Whispering House. I first encountered it while surveying land for a friend who was considering building a cabin nearby. The sun was low, bleeding orange across the water, and the wind carried the smell of wet earth and cedar. The house sat on a slight rise, half hidden by wild grasses. Its roof sagged, paint peeled, but the front porch looked oddly clean. The door was open. Inside, the air was thick, almost viscous, smelling of old wood and iron. The living room was empty except for a single rocking chair in the center. It swayed gently, back and forth, though no one sat in it. I stepped further in. The floorboards were dusty, yet beneath each step, footprints appeared, bare, small, and disappearing after a few moments. The walls were lined with portraits, family photos, old school pictures, strangers' faces. Eyes seemed to follow me. I reached the hallway. Doors lined both sides. Each one opened into a room identical to the last. Bed made. Dresser empty, closet bare. On each bed lay a small object, a shoe, a toy, a wristwatch, all worn. Used, but abandoned. Each bore a small scratch, deliberate, forming lines I couldn't decipher. I heard footsteps. Upstairs. Soft. Bare. Deliberate. My name whispered, faintly through the walls. I froze. The last door at the end of the hall was slightly ajar. Warm air, sweet and coppery, drifted out. I pushed it open. Inside was a mirror, floor to ceiling, framed in carved oak. My reflection stared back, but wrong. My mouth moved before mine did, eyes widened, fingers twitching slightly before my hands did. Behind me, soft laughter. Hundreds of tiny voices, all echoing in the walls. Figures emerged from the shadows. Children, adults, people I vaguely recognized from town. Pale, thin, eyes black and wet. They surrounded me, observing, waiting. I tried to run. The hallway twisted, elongated, doors disappearing, replaced by more doors. The figures multiplied, pressing closer, brushing against my arms, legs, shoulders, not harming, just learning. I stumbled, fell, and felt the floor give beneath me. Wet, slippery, thick as clay. The mirror rippled, and I saw hundreds of versions of myself sitting at the table with the figures, eating, laughing silently, staring at nothing. I crawled out the only door I could find, the front porch. The sun had risen. The air was normal again. The house was silent, still, empty. I never returned. But sometimes, when driving past Lake Buchanan, I see the rocking chair move gently in the window, and if I listen closely, I can hear soft, familiar whispers calling my name, waiting, patient, hungry for recognition. The house off FM 1107, near Burnett, didn't appear on any maps, and nobody remembered when it had been built. Locals avoided it, calling it the Hollow House. The stories surrounding it were vague, whispered, lights flickering when no electricity existed, shadows moving inside with no source, faint cries echoing at midnight. I discovered it because of a dare. A group of friends and I were driving late one Friday night, returning from Austin. Beer bottles clinked in the backseat, music low, laughter loud. Someone mentioned the Hollow House. Nobody had ever dared go in. My friend Jake, always impulsive, said, "Let's check it out. What's the worst that could happen?" The dirt road leading to it was narrow, winding, and choked with trees. As we approached, the air shifted, still, thick, smelling of wet leaves and iron. My truck, headlights illuminated. A small two-story house, grey with age, sagging porch, windows dark, and yet, a single upstairs window glowed faintly. The door was ajar. We got out. Footsteps on the gravel crunched softly, almost too soft. I called out. Silence. Inside, the house smelled of damp wood and old paper. Dust coated everything, but it moved, subtly, like caught in a slow current. The living room was empty except for a chair in the center. Not rocking, not moving, just watching. We split up. Bad idea. I took the hallway upstairs. Long, too long, lined with doors on either side. I passed rooms that repeated, layouts identical, objects in the center of each, a doll, a child's shoe, a rusted knife. Each item had a name scratched into it. Some I recognized, some my own. At the end of the hall, a door stood ajar. Behind it, a mirror, full length, floor to ceiling. My reflection was wrong. Lips twitching, eyes wider, fingers reaching before mine did. I turned, and the hallway behind me had disappeared. The walls curved inward, elongating, twisting. Hundreds of figures emerged. Children, adults, strangers, familiar faces. Pale, thin, eyes black and glinting. They pressed against the walls, not attacking, just waiting. A whisper, "You belong now. You're part of the house." I stumbled backward. The floor softened beneath me, sucking at my boots. Figures reached with cold, thin hands. Not grabbing, guiding, teaching, observing. I ran. Rooms multiplied endlessly. Doors led to more doors. Hallways stretched beyond reason. Mirrors reflected not just me, but others, people I had known, lost, or barely remembered. They sat at tables, standing silently, staring at nothing. The house absorbed them, preserved them, made them part of itself. Somehow, I found a door that led outside. The dirt road, moonlight, wind, normalcy. But the house was watching, waiting, patient. Now, driving past FM 1107, I see the window glow at night. Sometimes the chair rocks gently, and if I listen, I hear whispers, my name. Soft, urgent, beckoning me back. Once you enter a house like this, it never forgets. And one day, it will remember you.